join me in pledging the allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mrs. Cron, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Casper?
Here.
Mr. Deming?
Here.
Mrs. Miller? Here. Mr. Adelmo?
Here.
Mr. Sarnes?
Here.
Mrs. Schmidt? Here. Mr. Thompson? Mrs. Yardley? Here. Dr. Yarnell?
Here. Thank you. At this point, we are going to recognize 3 of our board members who are outgoing and will not be back with us when we reorganize in December. So, Dr. Radigan, would you like to join me and we'll do this? All right, the 3 board members who will not be joining us when we reorganize in December are Mr. William Sarnes, Mr. Dwayne Deming, and Mr. David Thompson. I'd like to start with Mr. Sarnes. Mr. Sarnes has been on the board for 12 years. He has been vice president the last 2, and I certainly appreciate his help in organizing and maintaining the board. I think perhaps, though, his most important contributions have been in the area of finance, of which he is really quite expert and has helped the board understand things that are sometimes very complex. I think Bill has the perfect temperament for a board member, very easygoing, but knows what's going on and is always around to help when needed. So I want to thank him for his service and thank him as a friend. Mr. Sarnes, if you would come this way.
Bill, I too would like to thank you for all your help with the Finance Committee and serving as the Vice President the last 2 years while I've been here. And we have a plaque for you. It says, presented to William Sarnes in grateful appreciation for your contributions to the Pennridge School District as Vice President and member of the Board of Directors 2004 to 2015.
I'll be brief, as I usually am, but thank you all. Unfortunately, a lot of the people I've come in contact with over the last 12 years aren't here any longer, but to those who are current board members, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure working with you. It was a very tough decision not to run again, but now that my wife and I are empty nesters, she's getting a little annoyed, I think, when I'm away too much. So I'm going to spend some more time with her, and I got a couple grandchildren coming, so I'm looking forward to that. So, and Dr. Yarnell, I especially want to thank you. I know 12 years ago I wasn't your prime candidate, but I hope that I've proven myself, and it's been a pleasure working with you. And I am amazed at how you can keep doing this, but good luck to you, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Second board member is Dwayne Deming. Dwayne has been on the board for 4 years. I believe he mentioned something that this was one of the many things on his bucket list. I don't know whether it was as much as he expected or perhaps a lot more. Dwayne served as president for a term in a rather challenging time, and I appreciate his efforts there. But most of all, Dwayne was our policy hawk. He took charge of the policy committee and tried to make sure that we were following the policy and that we had good policies on the books. And certainly that's a very important part of the board's function. I greatly appreciate Dwayne's efforts in that regard. I think we're a lot better off for the years that he served as policy chair. I also want to comment that Dwayne brings an engineering and industrial perspective to the board. I think, like it or not, education is a business as well as just a profession, and I think he really helped us on that score. So, Mr. Deming, I appreciate your service greatly, and also glad to be a friend of yours. So if you would, please join us down here.
While Dwayne is making his way down, I would like to reiterate what Dr. Yarnell is saying. All of these gentlemen have really given of their talents, their time. They've been very committed to this process, and it's many times a thankless job, and we certainly appreciate all they've done. So, Dwayne, your plaque says in grateful appreciation for your contributions to the Pennridge School Board as President, Vice President, and member of the Board of Directors, 2011 to 2015.
Well, I'll be very brief too. This has been a very interesting experience. I've had an interesting 4 years. It's really different from the other kinds of boards I've served on. I won't go into that very much, but I am pleased also, by the way, Dr. Yarnell and Dr. Radigan. I was in charge of the team that did the interviewing and ran the process, which ended up with this district getting Dr. Radigan as superintendent. I count that as one of the highlights. And I also want to mention my friend and acquaintance, but now my friend, Dr. Yarnell. This man really is into education. My God, I can't believe it. But he is. And I'm not. I'm an industry guy, and I thought this was part of my bucket list. And I'm pleased to have done it, but I want to thank you too for your specific contributions to Pennridge. Thanks again.
Finally tonight, Mr. David Thompson. He is unable to be with us for personal reasons tonight, but I want to mention that David came onto the board also 4 years ago, obviously with a great deal of energy and enthusiasm. He was the board president the first year he was here. He has been the person who has spearheaded the efforts at Pennridge to move into the 21st century learning. And he really has put an enormous amount of energy into this particular aspect of the educational process, and a very important aspect of that. I know Dr. Radigan and I were with Mr. Thompson at the PSDA conference the week before last, and David, even though his term is coming to an end, was showing the same level of enthusiasm and energy that he has always shown, especially as regards this 21st century learning process. And he has brought back information that I'm sure Dr. Scheid, Dr. Radigan, and I will all have to work with to move forward. But his efforts are greatly appreciated, and I wish him well, and I'm sorry he could not join us tonight. So I thank Mr. Thompson as well.
And even though he isn't with us tonight, we will certainly make sure he receives his plaque as well. So thank you to Mr. Thompson.
At this point, we are to questions and comments from guests. We have no names on the sign-up sheet. Is there anyone else who would like to speak before the meeting starts? If not, Mrs. Baines-Clemens?
Yes. Megan Baines-Clemens, West Rock Hill Township. I was wondering, who is our independent auditor that we hire as a school district?
Malley.
Do you know how long he's been our auditor?
Mr. Sarnes, do you know the answer to that question? I do not, Mrs. Clemens, David Clemens.
I would say it's been at least 6 years, but I don't know exactly. We did bid it out last time, but at least 6, 7 years since I've been on the board.
Okay. I tried to look it up on the website. It only goes back to 2009. It still showed the same company back then.
Right.
I was just wondering, based on the audit report that came out in July, it referred back to a prior audit that was done in 2012, and it looks like there were some recommendations that hadn't been fixed, some transportation data that wasn't correct at that time, and it seems to me that our own auditor should have caught that, and we've continued to use the same auditor, and now we have the same violations and additional mistakes. And I'm just wondering, since we're using the same auditor and he's still not picking them up and we have to wait till the state comes in and audits it, if the board's going to consider using a different auditor in the future that may be able to catch some of those things.
Mrs. Banis Clemens, we have not discussed that. That's certainly something that the board does from time to time, decide whether they want to bid it out, as Mr. Sarnes said. I can tell you from our experience at the vocational technical school, we did that recently, got a much lower bid, and got a much poorer audit. So we actually went back to the auditor we had before, which is not Nallian, the firm. It was a different firm. Both firms were different from this one. I think there are two schools of thought there, whether you want to hire a different auditor periodically or whether you want to keep the same one. But the state and the schools do audit different things too. So they're very different in the way they approach the issues.
Yeah, I was going to comment on that too, because the one is purely, Mally does a financial audit just like companies would get audited. A few of the things like the transportation issue, that wouldn't be something they would check, right? No, because it's something different. It doesn't affect our financial statements, but the state is looking for something different, so.
So is that something that's checked by a different auditor, or that's not something that's audited at all, that transportation information?
Well, that's audited by the state.
It's, okay.
That's a state auditor. Our other one is a independent auditor who's auditing our financial statements.
Right.
No, I don't believe,
No, state's not here.
no.
How often does the state do it?
The state comes in on a cycle, and it depends on really their timing and how fast they're moving through other districts as far as how fast they get back to our district. And it depends on what things they're looking for in their current cycle. The state will go through an audit cycle looking at one certain thing, maybe the hot button, and then when the next time they come through, they may be looking at a completely different thing. But mainly the Auditor General office looks at programs that, for the most part, they're looking at programs that generate dollars from the state to the school districts. For example, like transportation is a subsidy that's driven out by the costs and so forth that the district would have in transportation. For instance, the miles run, the number of students transported, the age of the school buses, and so forth. All that goes into a formula and drives out transportation. And as well as the number of students that are in hazardous walkways, so those type of things. The other thing that the state will look at a lot is your certifications, to make sure that all your teachers are properly certified. Again, that's something that the local auditors that are doing a financial audit would never look at.
But it's cyclical.
Yes, it's cyclical.
So it's,
Mhm.
okay, that's
Yep.
what I just wanted to let the public know.
And they're usually 2, 3, 4 years behind the current year when they come in.
Okay. The reason I was asking too, Bill Gorman, the guy who does your audits for the VOTEC, also does those financial audits for Palisades, and I guess they do a more thorough audit, and that's something that he usually does look at. So I didn't know if, depending on the auditor, if certain ones are more thorough and look at more things than others.
You can always hire the auditor to do additional work. We have done that specifically some years back with the audit of the band. So that's simply a matter of what the scope of the audit is, and of course, the cost comes with the scope.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Not, we'll move to the consent calendar. I would first note that on the superintendent's personnel report, item 39 has been removed. There's a lack of documentation in that particular issue. With the remaining items A through J, do I have or are there any that the board members would like to move separately? If not, do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar consisting of items A through J? Thank you. Mr. Deming, do I have a second? Seconded by Mrs. Schmidt. Moved by Mr. Deming, seconded by Mrs. Schmidt to approve items A through J on the consent calendar. Comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Thank you. The next issue is, or not an issue, I apologize, the next item is the student liaison report. We have a substitute here tonight. Evan Carey is the gentleman who's going to report for the student liaison group. Welcome, Evan. And whatever you have to offer, we would welcome hearing.
So from Student Council, Homecoming was very successful this year, and we raised a lot of money for Grandview Hospital through the Pink Out sales this year. Also, Harvest Breakfast will be November 24th before school, and it's open to the public. We are also planning a blood drive in December, and there is no confirmed date for it yet, and that's all from Student Council.
Thank you. And I understand you're running as the state representative for the Department of Education as a student liaison or student representative. My best wishes. Can you give us a bit of an update on what's involved in that?
So, Student Council is involved in this organization called Pennsylvania Association of Student Councils, and they split Pennsylvania up into regions, and Region F, which is our region, is Bucks, Montgomery, and Delaware County. And so I'm going to run for a position to be a state board representative for Region F. And what we have to do is we have to present a presentation to our Region F representatives and all of the students in it. And if we get selected, I will go to the state board meetings once every 2 months and talk about to Region F.
Thank you. Best wishes on that endeavor. President's report. I do want to mention, I already mentioned when I was down at the podium, but I do want to mention that not last week, but the prior week, from the 13th through the 16th of October was the Pennsylvania School Boards Association annual meeting in Hershey. Hershey's a great place to go, as most of you probably know, at any time, but this was a really interesting meeting. I had never been there due to work commitments before, so I was really glad for the opportunity. Dr. Radigan and Mr. Thompson joined me. There are sessions, concurrent sessions. There were 7 separate tracks that you can follow. Obviously, the biggest problem is figuring out which of the talks and presentations you attend, because you can't attend all of them. And with 3 representatives, we couldn't begin to cover 7 topics at a time. So we did our best and moved from among different topics. They were a fascinating collection of topics. Some of them very technical on things like the new education standards that we are testing to in the state. Some of them much more socially connected. I attended a very well done talk from the Woodland Hills School District in suburban Pittsburgh. Woodland Hills is a success story, kind of despite itself, because it is something that was put together, a little bit like the famous remarks about a committee to put together a horse that turns out with a camel or some other animal. This turned out to be under court order due to discrimination, This was done back in the late 70s and early 80s. So 8 separate school districts, not 8 municipalities, but 8 separate school districts were combined to form this Woodland Hills School District, which has become, at least from all the statistics shown, a very successful school district and a very diverse school district, both in terms of the actual ethnic groups within the district, but also in terms of rich and poor residents and students. So it was a rather fascinating talk given by the superintendent, school board member, and some of the people in the administration who spearheaded this effort to make Woodland Hills successful. There were many talks worthwhile. For board members, we will have access to all these talks because we did attend and obviously paid to attend. So I think it's worthwhile looking at them and seeing if there are any that you wish to peruse. So it was certainly a worthwhile thing. The other thing I want to talk about, which connects to the school board convention, is the 2 topics that were at the top of the list in every discussion, even though they weren't specifically on the agenda, of course, were the state budget or lack thereof, and the pension crisis and how to handle it. Obviously, Pennridge is in many ways very fortunate that we are still able to cope with the state budget, despite, I believe, Mr. Dalbert may be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but being owed more than $6 million at this point in time, and more to come, of course, if the budget crisis isn't solved. There are other districts which are really in trouble because of the cash flow issues. They are districts depend much more heavily on state aid, and in some cases they're talking about severe changes, such as shortening the school year or not paying staff, things that obviously will not have positive consequences. So that certainly was one, as I say, the pension crisis being another. We all know how the pension affects our budgets and how difficult that has become. So those are the things that I wanted to talk about tonight. I do not have any additional right-to-know requests to report. So at this point, we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Radigan.
Great, thank you, Dr. Yarnell. First, I'd like to say welcome to Boy Scout Troop 67. You'll see them over here. They're here tonight to learn what goes on at a board meeting as part of earning their citizenship merit badge. So welcome, Troop 67. I'd like to thank the Sellersville Elementary School for the district office meeting room display. And some other thank yous are in order. For the Pennridge Aquatic Club, they donated 2 IST timing system touchpads for the high school, the Pennridge Music Association for a storage cabinet, and Mary Ann Wilson for a string bass for the Pennridge Music Department. Just to let everyone know that our Takes Pride theme of the month for November will be kindness. Everyone will be reminded that kindness is the quality or state of being pleasant and sympathetic. People who are kind demonstrate compassion for others, and they are considerate and thoughtful of others. And with Thanksgiving being in the month of November, we thought that was the prime month to practice kindness and reinforce that skill for our students. Some points of pride. It's always nice when someone recognizes our students for the good that they do. High School Assistant Principal Scott Hagan recently received this letter from a woman from New Hope. Dear Mr. Hagan, on Sunday, September 20th, I participated in the Pennridge Gallery of the Arts in Sellersville. Students from Pennridge High School were present and volunteered to help the artists set up their booths. The students showed initiative and leadership. Their efficient, thoughtful, and cooperative effort was commendable. Thank you for encouraging them to provide their able assistance, which is very much appreciated. The students showed the pride of leadership and the qualities of character and personality that make our country great. Please note the wonderful characters or qualities of the following students who helped me this year. Juniors John Worthington and Natalie Pine, sophomores Rena Shepard and Jess Callums, and freshmen Abigail Morgan and Nicholas Casano. Very sincerely yours, Barbara Zichik from New Hope. I'm always impressed with the way our district pulls together to help out someone in need. The latest example is Sam Pierce, who's a special needs student at the high school. His father passed away suddenly in September. His mom passed away a few years ago, so you can imagine how Sam and his 10 brothers and sisters are feeling. Sometimes it's the little things that make a difference. One of Sam's teachers managed to get in touch with the Philadelphia Flyers, Sam's favorite team, and they responded with a box full of jerseys, hats, and other memorabilia. A few days later, our varsity football team presented Sam with a signed football before the team's 44-15 win over Abington. And then earlier this month, a group of teachers and staffers from Diebler and Penn North spent a morning helping the Pierce children clean up their house so they can put it on the market. Nothing can ever replace their parents, of course, but Sam and his siblings know they'll always have a family here at Pennridge. Then there are our Pink Out activities. Each year, students organize events designed to bring awareness to the need for more breast cancer research. If you were at the football game Friday night, you saw so many people wearing pink, t-shirts, hats, wristbands, you name it. We have not received a final number yet, but as Evan said, it was a large one we know, but if previous years are any indication, we have raised thousands of dollars for Grandview Hospital. The other day I stopped up to Hellman Field and the girls' soccer team invited me to join them in a picture as they presented checks of approximately $1,600 each to Grandview Hospital and the Urick family to help the fight against breast cancer. It was an honor to be part of that. Congratulations to the Penn Central Middle School Student Council, which recently collected more than 1,700 books that will be donated to Pennridge Fish and the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Teacher Amy Welter singled out student Gina Palatucci for organizing the drive and donating the most books. Mike Bollinger is a 2013 graduate and seminarian at St. Charles Borromeo, who recently had the chance to meet Pope Francis and serve Mass with him on the Parkway during the World Meeting of Families. In an article he wrote, Mike said it was an experience he will never forget. 11th graders had the extraordinary opportunity to hear from representatives of 6 major faiths: Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Mormonism, and Sikhism during a World Religion Forum on October 15th. After answering questions during a 90-minute session in the auditorium, the faith leaders were joined by about 20 students for a brunch and one-on-one interaction. Organized by the Social Studies Department, the forum was designed to give students a better appreciation and deeper understanding of the world's religions, which are crucial aspects of our world culture's curriculum and the departmental emphasis on global awareness and citizenship. Students were able to ask thoughtful questions of the people who practice these faiths to gain insights into the various religions through their responses. It was an extraordinary learning opportunity for the students. Thanks to Social Studies supervisor and teacher Keith Ververka for organizing this important event. And lastly, good luck to our fall sports teams who are headed to the district playoffs. Field hockey visited Downingtown West today. Boys soccer will travel to Boyertown tomorrow for a 4 p.m. game. Girls soccer will host Souderton at 7 p.m. tomorrow. And girls volleyball will be on the road against Perkiomen Valley tomorrow at 7. So good luck to all. Thank you, Dr. Yarnell.
Thank you. Committee reports. The first one is the Activities Committee. Mrs. Yardley.
Okay, the Activities Committee has not met since our last board meeting, but I do have one motion. And it's similar to motions that we had on our last meeting. So I'd like to move to approve the following overnight trip request. Penn North Middle School students to attend the Pennsylvania State Thespian Conference Thursday, December 3rd to Sunday, December 6th at Central York High School in York, PA.
Thank you. Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Perdomo. Moved and seconded to approve the Penn North Middle School trip to the Pennsylvania State Thespian Conference. Comments or questions from board members?
So I just want to say, I believe Mrs. Schellenberger is here if anybody has any questions, because it was not discussed at a committee meeting, and they are, I believe, sharing transportation with South Middle School, so that trip has already been approved. So if anybody has any comments or questions, any board members.
Then all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Good luck, Central York. Mrs. Yardley.
Okay, the next Activities Committee meeting is scheduled for November 11th here at 6:30. Well, there's several meetings that night, so I'm not sure which one comes first, but there'll be 3 meetings that night. Thank you.
Thank you. Curriculum Committee. There was no Curriculum Committee held during the period since our last full board meeting in late September. The next Curriculum Committee meeting is scheduled for November 16th, 2015. That will be at 6:30 or following the Technology Committee, which is also being held that night. Facilities, Mr. Casper.
Thank you. The Facilities Committee met on October 12th. There's 4 motions in the committee tonight. The first motion is to bid 2016 capital projects.
Do we have a second to the motion to bid the 2016 capital projects?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Sarnees. Comments or questions from board members?
I have 2 fast comments, please. There's some, the main thing we're going to be doing this year, in my opinion, is getting a new phone system finally. So that's one of the pieces of the bid. And then the next largest one is fixing our roofs. So I just want to make that comment.
Yes, I think actually this in total is one of the smaller numbers
$2,357,523.
we've seen in recent years.
Yep.
Hopefully that means that many things are in better shape. Other comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Mr. Casper?
Thank you. Second motion is to obsolete items, motion 2A through F.
With the second to that motion for obsoleted items. Thank you, Mrs. Miller. Moved and seconded to move to obsolete the items listed as A through F. Comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Mr. Casper?
Thank you. The third motion is to advertise bid number 16-20, school buses and transportation vans.
Do we have a second to that motion? Thank you, Mr. Smith. Moved and seconded to approve going out to bids for school buses and transportation vans. Comments or questions from board members? Mr. Casper?
Yeah, sorry, another 2 quick comments. First one is, I'll ask Sean the first one. On page 3 of the bid invitation, it didn't really give a specified date. I don't know if that's the actual document you're sending out. So while you're checking on that, my second comment about the buses is we have money for this. We've discussed it in committee. We've got money in this year's budget, and we've set aside dollars the past year, over $1 million of budgeted, committed money for our transportation department. I think this is the first time we're going out for buses in 3 years. So I just want, for those people who weren't at the meeting, that's what this bid's about. And then, do you see where I'm talking about, page 3?
Yes, the actual bids will be due back Tuesday, November 17th at 2:30 p.m. And we'll open them here.
So on the document that I saw, there was no date. It said November. I just didn't know if you knew that or not. It looked like somebody put a mark through it. So as long as you're okay with that,
We have it now.
okay.
We got our dates and we're ready to go tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Mr. Casper?
Thank you. The last motion, number 4, are change orders. Motion to approve change orders listed below. Change order number 1 and change order, both change order number 1, A and B, for unused materials in the Hellman Track and Field project and for the roof at Central.
Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Sarnees. Moved and seconded to approve the change orders for deducts, basically credits back to the district for unused material allowances. Comments or questions from board members? If none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Mr. Casper?
Thank you. The next Facilities Committee meeting is scheduled for November 9th.
Thank you. We'll move on to finance. Mr. Sarnees?
Thank you, Dr. Yarnell. The Finance Committee also met on October 12th, and we have several motions. The first is our general motion to approve contracts, and they are listed A through M.
Do we have a second motion to approve contracts? Thank you. Yes, I'll take Mrs. Miller's second. So moved and seconded to approve the contracts. Comments or questions for board members? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Mr. Sarnes?
The second is a motion to approve two settlement agreements identified as 2016-13 and 2016-14.
Do we have a second for the settlement agreement motion? Thank you, Mrs. Schmidt. Moved and seconded to approve the settlement agreements. Comments or questions for board members? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion, nay. Mrs. Yardley, motion is approved 7-1. Mr. Sarnes.
Mr.
sorry.
Sarnes, I have one comment on the next item, the nutritional services contract. That is a compensation plan, obviously, for the district's nutritional service employees. Mr. Daubert and I need to get a bit more guidance from the board on a particular item that is within the terms of that plan before the board finalizes it. It's something that we can discuss in executive session. I think there is a plan to do so later this evening. It concerns terms and conditions of employment, so it's proper executive session material. And the plan, I think, which the administration supports, is deferring consideration of that item until the December 1st or 2nd meeting, based on the guidance that you give us tonight. So my recommendation is that the board consider deferring that until December, assuming there's no objection to that.
I agree. I'm fine with that. If all other board members are fine, we'll pull that motion. Okay.
The motion hasn't been made yet. Motion hasn't been made yet, so just move to the next one.
All right. The next is a motion to approve the student activity account requests, two of them, South Middle School General Purpose and the High School FBLA.
Thank you. Do we have a second to the motion for student activity account requests? Thank you, Mrs. Yardley. Moved and seconded to approve this student activity account request. Comments or questions from board members? If none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Mr. Sarnes?
The next is a motion to accept and award RFP number 16-18 art appraisal services to Michael Ivankovich Appraisal Services for $7,000.
Do we have a second to that motion? Thank you, Mrs. Miller. Moved and seconded to approve the art appraisal award. Comments or questions for board members? None? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Mr. Sarnes?
Yes, and the final motion, I apologize to board members, but this, we discovered that we hadn't done this yet. Apparently, Mr. Dahlberg informs me that according to the school code, we do have to approve our bus routes and stops. So the next motion is to approve bus routes and stops for the current school year, 2015-2016 school year, as developed by the Transportation Department.
Do we have a second to that motion? Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Comments were, moved and seconded to approve the bus routes and stops for the 2015-2016 school year. Comments or questions for board members? If none, sorry, Mrs. Yardley.
I don't know, this wasn't brought up at a committee meeting, and it was never, and it was put onto SharePoint this afternoon for us to look at it, so I don't know how we can approve bus routes and stops. I don't know how the board can do that. And all the times when we approve curriculum, there's always a presentation of the materials and people are able to ask questions. So I'm wondering, does this mean that we approve of all the bus stops and routes that have been developed if we vote for this?
I can speak to the legal issue on that. Mr. Daubert is correct, or whoever referred to Mr. Daubert's advice that the school code requires the board to pass on routes and stops. That's correct. The school code, or at least the PDE regulations, requires it. There's nothing that prohibits the board from amending or modifying the routes later in the year. So it is a school board obligation to approve these, but you're not locked in for any period of time. You can always revisit the location and the number and the like. So I don't know if that helps you, Ms. Yardley, but that's what the law says.
Well, I'm just, what is generally the requirement? Because they've already started as the requirement, like, is there a time by which the board must approve?
Not that I'm aware of, just that the board has to approve stops and routes. And typically, this is the way school boards discharge that obligation, which is to have a recommendation presented by the administration, which the board adopts.
I just believe that there should be time. I don't, that if anybody has any questions or concerns, more than a few hours to look at it.
Mr. Daubert.
I wasn't paying attention to the first part what you said. We haven't really looked at this in any committee meetings. Do you recall, I think you mentioned this to me somewhere along the line, we haven't done this on the board for quite a while. Did you just say that and I missed it?
Yes, I believe the last time the board approved these was 2006.
Right, so it's something you're just trying to clean it up for us. That's how I take it.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, Mr. Geiger, our interim transportation director, brought this to our attention in the business office. So as soon as those folks over there had the routes pretty stabilized, Mr. Geiger brought the list over and we put it on the agenda. But it's certainly something that if the board felt that it needs more time, we could wait till next month to the next meeting. But it has to be done at some point. So it's totally up to the board as far as when you wish to do it.
Well, I appreciate that you brought this to us, since it's been a lapse, obviously. My personal opinion is that the board in times past has discussed at length the various parameters to use to address school district routes, transportation of various students. And obviously, each and every year, we have numbers of parents who come forward and ask us to change bus stops or buses. Most would like their children to be picked up at the mouth of their driveway, which I understand, but I also, that doesn't conform to the school code nor for everyone, nor is it a practical matter in terms of getting 7,000 students to school each day. Not all of whom ride buses, of course, but we have a lot of students that we transport, including 1,000 to private schools within the district and within 10 miles of the district boundaries. My personal opinion is that the transportation department has a tough job trying to get these routes squared away and to meet as many needs within the cost constraints and the facility constraints. And I don't see personally that I need to review them further. I would approve them as recommended. So at this point, there's a motion on the table. I'm going to call, unless someone else has comments or questions, I'm going to call the motion. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-1. All right, Mr. Sarnes?
The next Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for November 9th.
Thank you. We'll move to the intermediate unit. Mrs. Miller?
Thank you, Dr. Arnell. The Bucks County Intermediate Unit Board met on October 20th at the Shady Retreat location in Doylestown. The Special Education Mini Report informed us the IU has planned a year-long initiative for the 2015-16 school year dedicated to improving student achievement through differentiated instruction. Differentiated instruction helps students with diverse academic needs and learning styles master the same academic challenges and standards-based content. The initiative begins with each professional staff member setting a goal measured by student growth. The initiative has 3 checkpoints. First, each professional staff member identifying a goal to be measured by student growth. Second, reflecting on their practices at the mid-year point. And at the end of the year, reporting and reflecting on the progress that was made. The year-long initiative is designed to provide IU staff with ongoing opportunities to learn new ideas, reflect on their practices, and implement effective strategies to increase student achievement. In the Programs and Services Mini Report, we learned that the state recognizes the value of partnering with the IUs to provide training and support to our districts through state mandates and initiatives. PDE provides funding to the Pennsylvania's 29 IUs to help offset the cost of providing this support. Bucks IU will receive $137,000. 9 different PDE-sponsored initiatives for the 2015-16 school year are collectively known as the statewide system of support. The initiatives are college and career readiness, Keystone Exam project-based assessment, comprehensive planning, safe schools, standards-aligned systems, data-informed schools, and educator effectiveness. Although the following 2 items were listed under good news, the board was brought to tears on both items. The meeting opened with a video of a WOW student, which is part of the IU program, a class of the IU. A student received a rally, parade, and celebration provided by his peers for becoming a naturalized citizen, a U.S. citizen, and the student did the filming as well. It was really overwhelming. The second occasion involved a video of an elementary student with cerebral palsy swinging on the playground swing for the very first time of her life. The IU, through their Education Foundation, partnered with Quakertown School District to fund and install the program at Poff Elementary. It was quite overwhelming. Yes, it was very touching. It should be noted the IU Education Foundation has raised over $500,000 over 18 years. So please consider participating in the fundraising opportunities offered by the IU. The IU matters. It makes a difference in these kids' lives. The next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, November 17th at 7 p.m. at the it's not at the BCIU. It will be held at the Samuel Everett School this month rather. 145 for Scipia Drive, in Levittown. This is instead of the Tawanka. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Miller, and I certainly agree. The IU makes a great deal of difference with our, especially with our special needs students. Incredible work. At this point, the Personnel Committee, Mr. Regomo.
Thank you. The Personnel Committee, we have 1 motion. It's to approve the amended employment contracts to clarify deferred compensation plan for Dr. Jacqueline Radigan, Dr. Bruce Bavard, Mr. Sean Dahlberg, Mrs. Kathy Johnson, Mrs. Jacqueline McHale, Dr. Robert Phillips, Dr. Kathleen Brewster-Scheid, and Dr. Troy Price.
Do we have a second to the motion? Thank you, Mr. Devon. Moved and seconded to approve this revised employment contracts. Comments or questions from board members? Mr. Gasker.
I have a question regarding some of the people who are no longer actively here every day, but may still be on contract. Do we have to let them know we're changing their contract, or will we just change it for them?
Yes, they would have to approve and sign off on the amendments. These amendments are to contracts to which they're a party. So I would expect that each employee would approve the changes. They're relatively innocuous and favorable to both the district and the employee because they simply clarify an arrangement that was in effect previously, but yes, the employee has to approve and sign off on the changes.
So we don't know if we have that approval?
I don't know the answer to that question.
It didn't dawn on me till I was sitting here reading it.
The board
I would have asked earlier today, but
The board can still approve them, obviously, but it has to understand that the changes will not take effect until they're approved and signed off on by each employee. But there's nothing that prohibits the board from approving them and then circulating them to the employee for finalization.
okay, thank you.
Other comments or questions on this motion? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Mr. Grillo?
The next personnel committee meeting is scheduled for November 11, 2015.
Thank you. We'll move to policy review. Mrs. Miller.
Thank you, Dr. Yarnell. The next policy review committee is scheduled for November 11th.
Thank you. The Upper Bucks County Technical School Committee. Mrs. Schmidt.
Thank you, Dr. Yarnell. The Upper Bucks County Technical School met on Thursday, October 15th at the tech school. Their minutes are posted online on their website. Just a few points. The construction is coming to its end, and everybody's quite pleased with that. They're 93% complete on a cost basis. The school is really starting to come together and look great. Their estimated finish date is still 12/18 of this year, 2015. Just a few more notes. The October Student of the Month was a Pennridge senior, Nicholas Myers from Electrical Technology. And on the October 15th edition of the Bucks County Herald, it's a local weekly newspaper, the tech school, there was an article regarding the plant technology program and how the students there are using hydroponic planting. They are growing their own lettuce in the school and serving it in the cafeteria. So they're growing it and helping to feed the students there. And as Dr. Yarnell and Mrs. Miller can attest, when we have meetings, they make dinners for us, and we all benefit greatly from their efforts. So.
And the families.
Yes, yes. Hopefully soon the restaurant will be reopening at the tech school, and people in the community can go and see the wonderful things that the students up there bake for everyone to enjoy, and the meals. The next meeting for the Upper Bucks County Tech School is scheduled for November 19th at 7:30.
Thank you. And at this point, we'll move to the Technology Committee. The Technology Committee did not meet during October. Its next meeting will be on November 16th, 2015. That, along with the Curriculum Committee, starts at 6:30. I don't know yet which order those will fall into, but both meetings will be held that night. Act 48, Mrs. Schmidt.
Thank you, Dr. Yarnell. Act 48 Committee met on October 8th in the District Administration Office meeting room. Dr. Price, this was his first meeting with the Act 48 Committee. So there were several things that were discussed that day. First being the purpose of the Act 48 Committee, just a review of what the purpose is there. Second, what counts for Act 48 credits. There was some discussion on questions, frequently asked questions to do with Act 48. There was discussion in regard to the OTS updates, which is the online training service. And then a review of the comprehensive plan goals for dated 7/1 of 15 to 6/30 of 2018. And then there was also a review of in-service schedules for the 2015-2016 schedule. And it'll be reviewed scheduled for November 3rd. There will be some changes with that going forward with the in-service due to the new teacher's contract that will be discussed in a future meeting. And professional development needs assessment also was discussed there. And a few other items that were brought up. There was a suggestion made to consider grade level meetings instead of K-12 articulation on January 25th so that it can reach individual grade levels and have a better impact. And the next Act 48 Committee meeting is scheduled for January 14th of 2016.
Thank you, Mrs. Schmidt. Ad hoc fundraising.
There hasn't been a meeting since we last met. I just wanted to give an update, though. We are in the process of securing a donation of the pavers from TechoBlock, which is located in Penn Argyle, PA, and students from the Upper Bucks Technical School will be installing them after we get the pavers from TechoBlock. They're going to be sent out to be engraved, the ones that were already sold. And the students in the landscape construction program will be installing them, so under the direction of Jeremy Kunkel, who's a teacher at the tech school. So we'll share more information. Our hope is that it will be installed in November, so before the Thanksgiving game. And so then the next meeting will be scheduled as needed.
Thank you. Mr. Kunkel will be a busy man. He's growing lettuce and installing pavers, or at least his students are. Thank you. Any old business from board members? If not, I'll move to announcements. The next regular school board meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, December the 1st, 2015, at 7 p.m. in this room here in the high school. This is the annual reorganization meeting for the board, including newly elected board members. An executive session will follow tonight's meeting for the purpose of personnel matters. Now at public comment. If you have a public comment, please come to the podium. Give me your name, municipality of residence, and 3 minutes. Anyone choose to do so? If not, we'll move to press comments. Ms. Freeman, anyone else from the press here? If not, I thank you all for coming, especially the Boy Scouts. You swelled our numbers tonight. Come back and join us anytime. This meeting is adjourned.